Well, we have a lot of breaking news today. It's really extraordinary what's happening. It is now day 23 of the chicken rescue trial of this woman, Zoe Rosenberg, and the gentleman to the left, Assemblyman Ash Kalra of San Jose, is now weighing in, calling for more transparency in factory farms and slaughterhouses. We're going to play his entire commentary that he made yesterday at an Assembly Select Committee on Alternative Protein Innovation when I asked him a question about this. This is the defendant committing the alleged crime, rescuing 4 chickens from a slaughterhouse truck. And this trial is extraordinary for the length it has gone on. It is day 23. Do you know how many murder trials and sexual assault trials have wrapped up in less time? And one of the reasons is that this is a culture war that has now spilled out into the streets. Controversy as prosecutors claim that food processors cannot be held legally accountable for animal cruelty. And you have this assembly member calling for more transparency in factory farms and slaughterhouses. So there is a lot of news breaking as we speak. I'm going to play the entire comment the assemblyman made yesterday at this select committee. But first, let's go straight out to the courthouse where we have our amazing reporter, Matthew Zerbel, standing by. He's going to give us the very latest. What happened today in court, Matthew?
Yeah, today in court we had 2 DXE members, Elmira Tanner and Paul Pickelsheimer. The prosecution has brought them in, trying to subpoena them to make them testify as witnesses for him. And what they did today was a hearing before the jury is able to see them, to see whether they're going to be able to testify. And both of them immediately said, we want to talk about what our Fifth Amendment right is, because any testimony we give here could potentially be relevant to criminal charges that could be brought, not only here, but also in other counties. And so the judge or the prosecution here maybe has jurisdiction to offer them some immunity, which would bypass their ability to plead the Fifth Amendment. But in other counties where parts of this potential very broad conspiracy that the prosecution is trying to make this about, that wouldn't necessarily apply. And so their Fifth Amendment right still applies there. And so we had a long hearing after they left and had pleaded the Fifth, with them, their attorneys, defense attorneys, and the prosecution all trying to argue their side. And that didn't get wrapped up yet. It's still ongoing. What will be brought in and whether they might be required to testify.
So let me just make sure I understand this correctly. Elmira Tanner, who is the lead, the DXE lead, she's like basically the top person at Direct Action Everywhere, the animal rights organization that Zoe Rosenberg, the defendant, is a member of. She was on the stand. I just want to make sure I know that for a fact. I don't want to misinterpret.
Yep, that's exactly it. She was sworn in on the stand. They only asked her one question, and she said she needs to know, what the questioning is going to be about. That's the other piece. Is we weren't told at all what the prosecution intended to ask her to testify to until just today.
And Paul Pickelsheimer, which I could actually try to line that up. We have him on the night in question. Unchained TV was on the other side. We were reporting on the protest going on outside, which was a very peaceful protest with guitars and singing. And Paul was there, Paul Pickelsheimer, another leader of Direct Action Everywhere, kind of going over, everything that was happening that night. And he spoke to law enforcement that night. So what happened with him when he took the stand?
Yeah, actually what they want Paul to testify to is statements that they had made, which were about chickens having been rescued previously. That's Zoe's rescue, being rescued, the later group that came in after I believe Zoe had left, and also at a truck that was stopped. And so Paul had mentioned all of those things, I believe, on this very live stream then. And being the first to know, they want to ask further, how did Paul know that? And that's the main thrust of what they're planning to ask questions about.
Fascinating. And that is actually something I could probably play right now. Really fascinating. Let me see if I can bring it in and just share my screen and play it. What this is, and I'm going to try to.
This is Unchained TV.
This is the entire report that we did about that night.
When we last left off, we were driving from Berkeley, California, almost 40 miles northwest to Petaluma, wondering what would happen next on this animal rights mission under cover of darkness. Upon arriving, we were soon following groups of Direct Action Everywhere activists walking towards a chicken slaughterhouse. As we neared the location, we were greeted by a line of activists holding signs that read, "Right to Rescue." Moments later, we got a real taste of what that means.
We're here, as Sasha said, with a couple hundred activists out here to support our friends and support the chickens who are suffering unimaginable cruelty inside this slaughterhouse here behind us. We're in Sonoma County. Over 200,000 chickens are slaughtered each week.
We have a rescued chicken right here. We have a life just saved from the slaughterhouse. Thank you so much for saving her. Can you tell us anything? Did you go inside? What can you tell us?
I'm speechless right now.
Speak up.
I don't have much to say right now. I'm just speechless.
We went inside and we helped to liberate this little baby here from a truck that was going to be slaughtered very soon. There are more that are on their way out.
Wow. Well, please help us take action. Contact the Sonoma County District Attorney and ask that they prosecute the corporations and not the activists. And please share this live stream. Share this live stream. We need to get this out everywhere. We need to scream it across the world. We have more birds that have just been rescued.
Here's one.
We rescued the birds. They were going to die, and we know that they didn't want to die, so we took them out of the terrible situation.
Yeah, let's get them out of here.
We gotta get out of
You can see this one has blood, vomit, very sick, will barely move in my arms.
We've seen about 12 lives probably be saved. 4 before we came here, another 8 while we sat here and watched them come out. And this place doesn't like it when people are here. When people are here, it diverts the trucks to different locations. And thankfully, our friends are vigilant and they watch where the trucks go. And some of our friends just saved 5 more chickens from a truck.
Who could imagine 17 precious chickens have been rescued? I mean, I am just beyond words. And if one more is rescued tonight, that'll be even much better.
That is the night in question. You just saw it. I mean, Unchained TV was there. That is the night that this is all about. Let's go back out to the courthouse. You've got somebody who was in there as well, inside the courtroom. Let's bring him in.
Yeah.
Okay. We put the earbuds on, and thank you so much. All right. We just saw Paul Picklesheimer the night of in an Unchained TV report about this incident that is at the heart of this entire trial, the removal of the chickens from that slaughterhouse. What are your thoughts about what happened today?
So they did both of the
Speak up.
Amira and Paul, both of them plead the fifth, so they are not going to testify because they were advised that they could be like prosecuted in other counties. So it was interesting. The prosecution was really mad that they both plead the fifth. They were not very happy, and I don't know. It's interesting to see how this plays out. First time in a courtroom. Well, not first time, but first time in this trial ever. So.
All right. Well, so you hear, thank you so much. You hear that the prosecution was upset. Ellen Dent is just joining us from Animal Alliance Network. Here's what happened. The head of Direct Action Everywhere, Elmira Tanner, as well as Paul Picklesheimer, the guy you just saw in that video at the protest, they were just called to the witness stand by the prosecution. Now, we're in the middle of Zoe Rosenberg, the defendant's cross-examination. So it's really weird to stop the trial. The jury is basically twiddling their fingers, right? Twiddling their thumbs. This trial has gone on now for 23 days over these 4 chickens that were rescued. These are the chickens after they were rehabilitated by Zoe Rosenberg, and they're bringing in the prosecution is bringing in these other people to try to cross-examine them, and then they're pleading the fifth. What do you make of it, Ellen Dent?
I think they're, it sounds like they're desperate, to try to paint a picture that's just not there. These chickens were rescued out of compassion, and they're trying to, make all of these, activists look like terrorists, which is just not the case. They're compassionate. They're, thinking in the future, because I know that there's going to be a time in the future that we look back on this, and see the barbarity that's, happening in these facilities, no matter what they're saying in their statements to the public about being so humane. The footage shows the exact opposite. So I think it's very smart of them to plead the fifth so that they don't end up in this situation where they end up on trial as well, or having to do some sort of plea bargaining, and it just sounds like complete desperation from the prosecution side.
Well, it's very interesting that you mentioned the idea that these trials continue to go on because, and I'm trying to remove this comment. Here we go. That was something that I raised. I was yesterday at a hearing. The California Assembly Select Committee on Alternative Protein Innovation at UCLA, and this was chaired by California Assemblyman Ash Kalra of San Jose. And there was a question and answer period after the presentation. And I want to play what I asked because it made some news and it was pretty extraordinary. So listen to the entire exchange where I raised the fact that Unchained TV, our news organization, has issued an editorial calling for live public cameras in all slaughterhouses and factory farms. Watch, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
I've been covering the trial of Zoe Rosenberg, a 23-year-old UC Berkeley undergrad who faces 5 years in prison for rescuing 4 chickens from a slaughterhouse in Sonoma County. And this is day 22 of the trial, and it's characterized by wildly differing interpretations of what's happening inside slaughterhouses and factory farms in California, with the activists saying they've tried to report criminal animal cruelty over and over again for years without a single investigation from law enforcement, with the companies saying they have the highest animal welfare standards. So my nonprofit streaming network, Unchained TV, just wrote an editorial suggesting let's solve these differing characterizations of the same thing by having cameras in all factory farms and slaughterhouses in California. And it's not as crazy as it sounds. In England, in Israel, and in Spain, they already require surveillance cameras in all slaughterhouses. So I feel like it has to be broadcast to the public, otherwise it wouldn't be effective. What do you think about the possibility of having cameras, given that these trials keep happening here in California?
Yeah, I think it's shameful that folks are just trying to expose an industry that provides a ton of, I mean, this is the food that we eat, right? We're not talking about some tangential industry that's doing some niche kind of work. We're talking about an industry that provides a massive amount of food to the masses. And so it's interesting that a couple of the places you can't film are in prisons and in slaughterhouses. I think that speaks a lot to both, right? The conditions of both. And so I personally support the ability for us to have more transparency. I think that we've dramatically underfunded intentionally, especially at the federal level, food inspections and oversight. I think a lot of lobbying has a lot to do with that. And we would contend with a lot of lobbying here if we push for legislation that push for any kind of transparency, but especially cameras. But it's definitely something that I'm certainly willing to look into, and I think it's something that would require a movement, because I think that it would require a lot of folks to be able to speak up on behalf of the animals beyond those that are already doing it by trying to expose these industries. But you've seen sometimes even drone shots, just outside of facilities, these pig slaughterhouses and cattle, and just kind of the behavior and the conditions that they're under, let alone those that are brave enough to sneak cameras inside. And so I think this industry does need to be exposed, because there's a reason why they don't want us to see it. Think about any other kind of aspect of our food industry. They don't hide it from us. They don't hide how they harvest the corn or the tomatoes. They don't hide how they make, Ritz crackers or, Oreo cookies, right? They don't need to hide that. Even if those foods may not be necessarily healthy for you, they're still showing you how to control whether it's healthy for you or not. So it's not a matter of whether it's healthy for you. It's a matter of what's happening inside in the darkness. And so whenever you get, you just have to evolve, whenever you can bring light to the darkness, that's a good thing. And so I would support that.
Wow. Okay, I want to go out to Lindsay Baker. What do you make of that? I mean, that's a state assemblyman saying there needs to be more transparency, and he would consider looking into the possibility of cameras in slaughterhouses.
Well, I think that's very encouraging because it's obvious that there should be nothing to hide. So why would they have any opposition to that? Like he said, other food sources, there's full transparency, and that's what we're asking for. I think this opens a door for us as the voters and constituents to go to the rest of our, because as he said, he's going to need more support. We're going to need more support. But this opens a door. We have an opening here, and this is very, very encouraging to me.
Yeah, I had no idea what his answer would be when I asked him. There was a Q&A. I went there, it was a news event. It's a very important news event, a Assembly Select Committee on Alternative Protein Innovation. And there was a Q&A session. I just thought, I'll ask. And frankly, I was very pleasantly surprised at his answer. Ellen Dent, what are your thoughts hearing that?
I'm not surprised by his answer. Assemblymember Ash Kalra is definitely on the forefront of, promoting compassion. He's been to our pig vigils in the past more than once. He's spoken at them. He, is the reason there's, $5 million from the, California budget that's gone to research for this, alternative protein. So, I'm not surprised at all. He's very compassionate, and he's, making strides for our movement, and I'm so grateful for him.
Yeah, and I want to say also that The Guardian, and there's so much breaking news, I try to keep up with it, but The Guardian, I'll put it up Monday, published an in-depth piece on this case. So we're going to talk about that as well, because that means it's getting international attention. The Guardian is based in England. Matthew Zerbel, what can we expect this afternoon when we go back to court in literally 10 minutes exactly?
Yeah, so the first thing is the last closing argument that we had after both the people were brought in, is a question about will our investigation and subsequent rescue at Hunter Lane be coming into court next. So that was one of the main formative reasons that Zoe thought that there might be animal cruelty at the Perdue slaughterhouse other than Raven's investigation. And thus far, it's been excluded for just being too much. The judge has said, we don't want to get that deep into it. It's overly complex to the jury. But after the prosecution has been able to bring in so many other cases, so many other incidents, the judge has said it would paint an incomplete picture if it wasn't allowed. And yet, at the same time, there is a balancing act here because the jury has already been told 6 weeks. It's looking like it could go longer than that. And so bringing too much stuff up too late in the trial is also an issue. So we're going to see how deep exactly we're likely to get into there. I think the most likely outcome of that is Zoe will be able to briefly testify to her experience there, but we won't be probably able to bring in much else.
When you say Hunter Lane, nobody knows what you're talking about. You're talking about a factory farm that is, see, she took the chickens from a slaughterhouse, but those chickens are raised in a factory farm. And Perdue, which we invite on anytime, but just to explain it, they own Petaluma Poultry, which has factory farms and the slaughterhouse. So what the defense is saying is the door has been opened to showing not just the footage at the slaughterhouse, which we've seen quite a bit, but the footage from the factory farms that where these animals are raised, and Zoe claims that there is criminal animal cruelty there as well. And Hunter Lane is one of those factory farms. I can show you very quickly. These are some of the photos that Direct Action Everywhere has submitted in their attempt to prove that there is animal cruelty perpetrated at the factory farms from which these animals come. So now that we know what Hunter Lane means, continue on.
Yeah, very helpful context there. So we'll hear another ruling on whether Zoe can bring in that prior investigation that she did into, as you just said, one of the factory farms, the supplier to the slaughterhouse. That forms a lot of the reason that she believed sick birds could be at the slaughterhouse. And so it's likely what she'll just be able to say is, I did an investigation at a place that I believed was a supplier to the slaughterhouse. And from that, I found what I believe to be sick birds. We probably won't be able to establish those as facts. It's just too much to get into. But we probably will be able to establish those as things that she believed and a couple direct things that she did. So once we settle on what she's allowed to say there, I believe that the prosecution will probably finish up with their cross-examination, and then any of the other further rulings on stuff that was discussed this morning, we might be able to wrap up and get more final answers on as well.
So thank you for that explanation. Now, Matthew, we're showing footage that Direct Action Everywhere says this is the slaughterhouse you're looking at here, according to Direct Action Everywhere, and they claim that there are birds that are not properly stunned flailing. You can see the footage right there. And then prior to that, you were looking at footage from inside one of these factory farms. The jury will not see that footage, but correct me if I'm wrong, they will simply hear Zoe explaining that what she saw at those facilities, or that facility, one of those facilities, influenced her decision to go in and rescue the chickens at the slaughterhouse. Is that correct?
That's, I think, probably the most likely ruling. It's where the judge seemed to be leaning, that he was indicating he was leaning towards. It's still possible that the entire thing will be excluded, or possibly the entire thing will be included and allowed to show the footage itself.
Wow. Well, this is one of the reasons why this trial is dragging on, because it is a high stakes chess game. As I mentioned, it's now getting international coverage. The Guardian, which is a major UK-based publication, just did an in-depth piece on this case. And so it's really a trial, not just with an individual facing 5 years potentially, but also animal agriculture itself on trial, to the point where the district attorney of this county thought it was important for her to sit in the gallery and listen to the cross-examination of defendant Zoe Rosenberg. And now you have a member of the California Assembly saying there needs to be more transparency. So this is, I mean, a 7-week trial. Oh my God. Bless you.
Sorry.
Bless you again. Is there, you said it might go into, no, it's definitely going into week 7. This is Friday. And then Monday, last question before you go in. I know you have only 3 minutes to talk to us or less, but do we really think closing arguments are going to happen on Monday? Because it sounds like there's a whole bunch of things that are still, that need to be cleared up before. We haven't finished the defendant's cross-examination. The prosecution, is it a dead issue with Paul and Elmira possibly testifying because they pled the 5th, or they indicated they would plead the 5th, or could that still come back?
Their lawyers said they want more time to review the documents that were just provided about what they were being asked to testify to. And so this is another thing that'll be ruled on after lunch. Everyone in the courtroom, the judge, lawyers on both sides, still keep talking about closing statements on Monday. And I personally, I don't know why. I feel like maybe they know something that I don't, but I feel like the way I see it, the trial will probably keep going at least 1 or 2 more days, if not more.
Yeah. And by the way, this could be the last day for Matthew. I just want to give everybody, let's give him a round of applause for his great work. A volunteer. He's not getting paid for this, just doing it to help basically provide this information. The reason we're doing this is that I've often said, not really joking, that the only way animal rights activism can get coverage is if you get naked or get arrested. And that shouldn't be the case. People should be able to get these issues out in the open without having to put their freedom at risk. And that's one of the reasons that we here at Unchained TV committed to covering this trial every single day, which we have done. It is now day 23. I know everybody on our panel, I've canceled flights, I've canceled doctor's appointments because we made a commitment. And what we ask people watching at home is share this out. We are the CNN, Netflix of veganism, animal rights, but we don't have the reach of those major publications. We rely on people sharing out. So hit that share button while you're watching. Thank you so much, Matthew Zirble. And we're going to continue our conversation because I feel like we're getting to a point where this trial is going on for so long that it is becoming part of the national conversation where basically you have members of the California Assembly and major stars like Moby saying, you know, what the heck? If the prosecution is claiming that food processors, which is that slaughterhouse, are not accountable for animal cruelty laws, and the law enforcement is saying we will not investigate, which is basically what they've said to Direct Action Everywhere, which has presented them with evidence year after year, then essentially what society is saying is you have no rights to find out what's happening behind the closed doors of factory farms. If you try to go in there yourself, you're going to get arrested and prosecuted. And the police won't investigate, and you just need to put up and shut up. But society, including a member of the California Assembly, is saying, no, that's wrong. We need more transparency. And he is going to look into the possibility of having cameras inside slaughterhouses and factory farms. So that's a major breakthrough. What are your thoughts, Ellen Dent?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There needs to be more transparency in this industry while it still exists, because I do hope that one day it doesn't exist. And that is exactly, what Zoe and so many others are fighting for. She's literally putting her freedom and her life on the line, to set this precedent that it should not be illegal to help other animals when they're in distress. And they are in distress, from being in these farms, being, trucked to their deaths at these slaughterhouses. I mean, you can see just in this video here that you're showing that she really, took the time to look and calculate, how sick these chickens were before she took them, before she rescued them, is what I want to say. And this should not be illegal. So, I couldn't, I couldn't support more the idea of putting cameras into these places. These places need to be transparent to the public. There's direct, involvement with the public, with, the pieces of these other animals that come out of these places, and the public consumes, these animals. And so, at first glance, it's terrible that it's taking up so many resources to make this point, to put Zoe on trial, to try to make an example of her. But I'm glad that it's taking this long and that they are taking up this many resources, because it's giving the general public a chance to see. It's giving the mainstream media a chance to cover this, and we should all be outraged.
Well, you're raising so many good points. I want to play what Zoe Rosenberg, the defendant, said about the last time she took the stand, which was yesterday, I believe, honestly, it's becoming a blur. This is day 23, but this is the last time she took the stand. And a very confusing thing that the prosecution asked her, why didn't you take more chickens?
The prosecutor asked me why I didn't rescue more birds. And of course, I wish I could have rescued more birds who were being criminally abused at Petaluma Poultry, but I didn't have the resources to do that at the time. That's why I hoped that law enforcement would get involved and that they would help all of the birds who are still suffering there. But it has been over 2 years, and as far as I know, law enforcement has still done nothing to help these birds. I'm done with court for the day, but I'm still not done testifying. The prosecution spent about half of their time on cross, just bringing up past protests I've done and social media posts I've made, going back as far as 2016 when I was 14 years old. They're trying to paint me as radical and extreme. They have also tried to attack my credibility and challenge the basis of my belief that there was animal cruelty happening at Petaluma Poultry. So we are trying to argue that that has opened doors to introducing additional animal cruelty evidence on redirect. The judge will rule on that tomorrow.
All right. Well, Lindsay Baker, what are your thoughts about the fact that the prosecution asked, why didn't you rescue more chickens?
Well, I think if I was just saying my impression of it, I think they were alluding at, well, 2 or 3 chickens, why didn't you take more? Obviously, this is just a stunt, but she answered perfectly that she hoped that by bringing evidence firsthand to the police, because everything goes live evidence, by putting this out there that we did a rescue, we admit to doing a rescue, that the police would take action. And that's why she took 2 or 3 and felt that that was significant. They were trying to, I think, say trying again to discredit her credibility.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I've covered a lot of celebrity trials when I was in mainstream media, Lindsay, and team. And what I've always said is these trials are like runaway freight trains. They take on a life of their own, and you never know where they're going to go because there's so many factors at work. And I think my personal opinion is that at least from a public relations standpoint, this trial is backfiring on the industry. You got to remember that the industry sent out this brochure at the start of the trial saying, support Sonoma County poultry workers. Direct Action Everywhere did some kind of reverse check on these images and said a lot of them, they insisted are not even from California, that they're from other countries. So there's this growing division between what the industry says is happening and what activists say is happening behind closed doors. That is leading to further discussion. It's leading to articles in, for example, The Guardian. It's leading for Unchained TV to call for cameras in the courtroom. It's leading to this assembly member saying we need more transparency, and I will consider looking into the idea of cameras in the courtroom, which was greeted by applause at this select committee hearing. What are your thoughts? And I know you've mentioned Michael Fujimori. You are a member of the Captain Paul Watson Foundation, but you've also been a juror quite a few times. What are your thoughts?
Well, as far as the jury, the trial taking 23 days and going weeks and weeks, I think that's actually a good thing because it's bringing more attention, more media attention to this issue. If the trial was, say, like 1 or 2 weeks and it was over, then nobody would pay attention to it. But because of the fact that this is a kind of a historic trial as far as length, is actually getting more media attention, and I think it's going to bring more awareness to the issue, and that's a good thing because we need transparency in this industry for sure.
All right. I want to, which I always do, invite the company on. And before we do final thoughts, I want to basically give the company side. First of all, after Zoe took the stand, a spokesperson for Petaluma Poultry issued a statement saying that Rosenberg's actions were a well-planned, deliberate breach of private property with the intent to steal, a criminal act that was deliberate, strategic, and bordering on corporate espionage or agro-terrorism. And also, the company has said it has the highest animal welfare standards. We invite everybody, go on and check it out for yourself. They've got a lot on their website, corporate.perduefarms.com/responsibility/animal-care. They have said that they have the highest standards of animal care and give their birds space to roam, access to the outdoors, and that the claims made by DXE are false with the ultimate goal of ending animal agriculture. Now, DXE has pointed out what they consider discrepancies. You see there, the company saying no cages or crates, but Direct Action Everywhere says, even on its face, that's not accurate because here's the video of Direct Action Everywhere member Zoe Rosenberg rescuing the chickens, and this is what she's being charged in connection with. And there you see, what is she removing those chickens from? A crate. So, again, we invite the company on anytime. We would love to dialogue. One of the reasons why Unchained TV has called for cameras in all factory farms and slaughterhouses is because of these wildly divergent characterizations of the exact same thing. If two groups cannot agree on what's going on behind closed doors of factory farms, and if the law enforcement refuses to investigate, which I think it's pretty clear that they have refused to investigate, nobody is contesting that. Nobody in the prosecution's team is saying, oh, no, we investigated over and over again and we didn't find anything. No, they've said quite the contrary. The prosecution said in court that they felt that food processors cannot be held accountable for animal cruelty laws. That's how it was characterized by the Perdue rescue trial feed. Again, we'd love to show you exactly what they say and even play the video, but we applied to be the court pool camera and we were rejected. So there are no cameras in the court. So nobody can say with absolute certainty you rely on reporting, but that's what it's been reported, that the prosecution said food processors cannot be held accountable for animal cruelty. So all of that, suffice it to say, this is a culture war. It is raging right now inside the courtroom as well as outside the courtroom. Let's go to final thoughts as we end week 6 and enter week 7 of this extraordinary trial. Let's start with Lindsay Baker.
Well, one would hope that the jury would see through the credibility of the prosecution, because they try to have things both ways. They accuse her of stealing, but don't charge her with stealing. They charge her with trespassing. Why is that? They say she's committing, that what she's saying is totally false. Well, prove her wrong. Open up the doors. Let the cameras in. Let the cameras roll. I mean, it's very simple. They're looking for every which way they can to cover their trail, and it's really futile. It's, in the end, I believe this is all going to come out in favor of the transparency and about animal agriculture. And it's just sad that a young girl has to make the kind of sacrifices, and all the others have to make those kind of sacrifices in order to bring this to the public's attention.
Yes, and once again, here's the defendant. She faces up to 5 years or even 5.5 years, depending on who you ask. All right, final thought, Michael Fujimori.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to just thank Assemblymember Kalra for, for speaking out for animals. He has a great record on animal rights issues, and I hope that he will either bring up legislation or co-legislation to make your suggestion, Jane, into a law. And also, there's a saying that every cloud has a silver lining. And I think the silver lining in this trial could be that because of you, Jane, and this show on Chain TV, that laws could be passed to require factory farms and slaughterhouses to install cameras, allowing the public to finally see if animal cruelty laws are being broken, and we would finally get some type of transparency and accountability.
All right, thank you for that. And Ellen Dent, save the last for best, the best for last. Your final thought.
Hardly, but thank you. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Lindsay and Michael. Laws need to be changed. There needs to be more transparency. They're not making sense in the courtroom. They're saying that she stole these chickens, but yet they dropped the theft charge. So it just doesn't make any sense. And I think Shaka had said on an earlier live, as long as she's able to show that she didn't think that she was breaking any laws, which she did not. She thought she was doing what she needed to do, for the necessity defense that they also took away from her, trying to get this, this charge to stick and trying to prosecute her. And I'm, very sad to see her have to endure this trial, to have it draw out so long, but I'm very glad that the public is seeing this. And I really think that it's going to help set a precedent for laws, anti-cruelty laws, to be extended to, chickens and other birds that are in the industry. I've had people get upset when I call chickens birds. So people need to understand that they are birds, just like our birds outside, they are also birds. And, we need to break through that speciesism and that cognitive dissonance, that they are not individuals, that they don't think and feel and dream and cuddle with humans, even just like any other animal.
Thank you so much, all of you. I know that this trial, sneezes and coughs as we barrel toward week 7. I think it's taking a toll on all of us, actually. And we know that Zoe herself is sick with a disease she's had from childhood, and the jury sees her with a tube in her nose, and she's not allowed to mention why. So as we wrap up today, I want to say, share this out. Join us on Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific. It's possible we could have closing arguments. Next week is going to be the most crucial week. I'm going to wrap up by replaying what Ash Kalra said, this California Assembly member, yesterday, calling for more transparency in factory farms and slaughterhouses in California, the world's 5th largest economy. Watch, share out, get involved. Be part of history.
I've been covering the trial of Zoe Rosenberg, a 23-year-old UC Berkeley undergrad who faces 5 years in prison for rescuing 4 chickens from a slaughterhouse in Sonoma County. And this is day 22 of the trial, and it's characterized by wildly differing interpretations of what's happening inside slaughterhouses and factory farms in California, with the activists saying they've tried to report criminal animal cruelty over and over again for years without a single investigation from law enforcement, with the companies saying they have the highest animal welfare standards. So my nonprofit streaming network, Unchained TV, just wrote an editorial suggesting let's solve these differing characterizations of the same thing by having cameras in all factory farms and slaughterhouses in California. And it's not as crazy as it sounds. In England, in Israel, and in Spain, they already require surveillance cameras in all slaughterhouses. So I feel like it has to be broadcast to the public, otherwise it wouldn't be effective. What do you think about the possibility of having cameras, given that these trials keep happening here in California?
Yeah, I think it's shameful that folks are just trying to expose an industry that provides a ton of, I mean, this is the food that we eat, right? We're not talking about some tangential industry that's doing some niche kind of work. We're talking about an industry that provides a massive amount of food to the masses. And so it's interesting that a couple of the places you can't film are in prisons and in slaughterhouses. I think that speaks a lot to both, right? The conditions of both. And so I personally support the ability for us to have more transparency. I think that we've dramatically underfunded intentionally, especially at the federal level, food inspections and oversight. I think a lot of lobbying has a lot to do with that. And we would contend with a lot of lobbying here if we push for legislation that push for any kind of transparency, but especially cameras. But it's definitely something that I'm certainly willing to look into, and I think it's something that would require a movement, because I think that it would require a lot of folks to be able to speak up on behalf of the animals beyond those that are already doing it by trying to expose these industries. But you've seen sometimes even drone shots, just outside of facilities, these pig slaughterhouses and cattle, and just kind of the behavior and the conditions that they're under, let alone those that are brave enough to sneak cameras inside. And so I think this industry does need to be exposed, because there's a reason why they don't want us to see it. Think about any other kind of aspect of our food industry. They don't hide it from us. They don't hide how they harvest the corn or the tomatoes. They don't hide how they make, Ritz crackers or, Oreo cookies, right? They don't need to hide that. Even if those foods may not be necessarily healthy for you, they're still showing you how to control whether it's healthy for you or not. So it's not a matter of whether it's healthy for you. It's a matter of what's happening inside in the darkness. And so whenever you can, if you just have the value, whenever you can bring light to the darkness, that's a good thing. And so I support that.